let's open our Bibles to Psalm 139. Psalm 139. Today, like I said in our announcements, is Sanctity of Life Sunday, which is about defending the unborn. So today we're going to read a psalm that David wrote. And really this song is this beautiful piece of poetry. And I'm excited to share with you kind of especially the middle parts of it and how they describe the work that God does when he makes an individual. But what we'll see as kind of the main theme of this whole song is that God knows you. God knows me. God knows people. And that's why human life matters to God, because he knows us. So this song celebrates that God not only knows the unborn, but he knows you. He knows me. And because of that, we really have these assurances of always having a friend and always having someone who's there. Are you down? Do you feel isolated? Many in this world feel isolated, though we're more connected than ever through the internet and through our phones and all that. At times, we can feel more lonely than ever. The neat thing about this psalm is that it is just so personally connected with God. And here's why I love so many of the psalms. Because they don't just talk about God in like the third person. They directly talk to God. They say, you, Lord, and the Psalms pray to God. They don't just give you a kind of narrative about who God is or about what he does, but they give you prayers. They give you the psalmist talking directly to God and just celebrating who he is. And that's what we'll see today, the psalm that just rejoices in who God is and the fact that God knows you and knows me. But not only celebrates who he is, it celebrates who humans are because of how God made them. And that's what we're going to see today in this psalm. So remember, this psalm was originally written in Hebrew, like all the psalms, and it uses repetition over and over so that you can see a theme emerge out of that. And the theme of this psalm that you'll see come up over and over is the theme that God knows us. If you look at the very start of the psalm, in Psalm 1, it says, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. See, there's the first time you see that. The second time you see it, verse 2, you know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You go down to verse 4. It says, for there is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. So God knows all the things we say. Go down to verse 6. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Okay, so it's kind of like saying, Lord, you know me in and out. I don't even know me that well. This knowledge is amazing. The fact that you know everything about me, it's too wonderful for me to even comprehend. Down in verse 14, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. So my soul knows that God knows me. And then verse 23 is an invitation to be known by God. It says this, search me and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties. So the psalm closes with an invitation. God, know me. I've recognized that you know me in and out. So my response in prayer is, Lord, know everything about me, because in that I find peace. So may you find peace in this psalm this morning as I read it to you and as we go through it. And we'll look at the various things about us that God knows. And hopefully I'll excite you to show you that since God knows humanity so well, That's why humanity is to be valued. That's why we have a Sanctity of Life Sunday, because life matters, and that's what we want to thrive. We want life to thrive. So the first thing we see in this passage is that God knows our actions. Look at verses 1 to 6 with me. This psalm is for the chief musician, a psalm of David. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off. You comprehend my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue, but behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You have hedged me behind and before, and laid your hand on me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. I cannot attain it. So how would you sum up verses 1 to 6 other than, wow, God knows everything about me, right? It kind of specifically focuses on actions. You search me, you know me, you know my sitting down, my rising up. I love that it says, you have searched me and known me. You know, how do you get to know someone? It's funny, in this day and age, the word search means a little something different than when this psalm was written. And that is how we get to know someone, right? If you meet someone and you connect with them, hey, nice to meet you. You know what people my age do? They Google you, right? And probably when you were interviewing me for pastor, you may have Googled me as well to see what comes up. And, you know, when we want to know someone, we Google them, and we'll find their Facebook profile, we'll find their LinkedIn, you know, and it'll say the jobs they've had. We might find their Instagram and see that they post way too many pictures of food. Oh wait, that's me, not you. And so we search people to figure them out, to just kind of give us a leg up on who these people are. Well, this is saying that God doesn't use Google. He uses his omnipresence. He uses his eyes that are everywhere all at once. God, excuse me, I have a cough drop. God searches us out. That means he seeks to know us intimately. He doesn't just stay up in heaven, far beyond us, not understanding who we are. He searches us out. I mean, if that doesn't just make your day, I don't know what will. The God of the universe cares about knowing you in and out. He doesn't Google you to see if you're good or not, or if you live up to his standards. He wants to know you. He wants a relationship with you. And if God values humanity so much, how much more should we? Not just the lives of the unborn, but just people on the street. You know, people just out in the world in everyday life. You know, here's something I struggle with. The drivers of Ithaca, they drive me nuts. They do many things that annoy me, and you know, even on the way to church today, I got annoyed by someone. I hope it's no one in the audience today. See, I know when it's Diane, because she has the little tab license plate, and she, you know, cuts in front of me, not really, you know, coming off my hill. But no, it was someone with a Prince Edward Island license plate. I thought, you drove all the way from Prince Edward Island here, and they were going 20 miles an hour. I thought, you have snow in Canada. What is the issue here? But, you know, and the trouble is, when I get annoyed, I kind of dehumanize people, and I get irritated. And we do that, you know, not just with drivers, but with people on the other side of the political aisle. With the internet, it's easy to do that with people. We do that with people that our news broadcasts and talks about. We make them the other. We do that with, you know, foreigners, people who weren't born here and they get here by whatever means they do, and we just kind of hold them at arm's length. We do that with people. We make them other. But this scripture says God searches people out. Are we the kind of people that, that search people out? Not to know them in a way to make us more mad, but to know them intimately, to love them with the way God loves them because he values them. Oh Lord, you've searched me, you've known me. Now it goes through all these, all these actions, right? Sitting down, rising up, my thoughts, my paths, my lying down. So whether I'm sleeping, whether I'm awake, whether I'm thinking, there's a word on my tongue before I even say it. You know it, Lord. That's interesting because I don't even know what I'm going to say half the time, right? When I'm preaching to you, I am not someone that manuscripts my sermons. So when I'm talking to you, a lot of times the illustrations that come out, I don't even know that they're going to come out until I say them. Like that poor Prince Edward Island driver. I didn't know that I was going to say that. It's not in my notes here. I didn't get to church and get irritated and write it down. I'm sorry. I knew this was going to happen. I had a cold, I licked it, and then it came back. Maybe I shouldn't lick my colds. All right. So God knows everything about us, knows all our actions. You know what this ought to do? On the one hand, it ought to terrify us. Because God knows everything we do. God knows every time we fail. God knows every negative thought we have. God knows every incorrect word we're going to say, every time we use our words to pierce people, to attack people. God knows it before we even say it. We ought to be terrified about that. But at the same time, we ought to find such freedom in that God still wants to search us out and know us and love us and send his son to die for us, knowing exactly what we're going to do. Can you believe that Jesus, knowing exactly what Judas would do, still ate that Last Supper with him? If you were to find out that someone was going to betray you to death, and you had an opportunity to either eat supper with him or just avoid him that day, I don't know about you, but I'd say, I'm okay. No thanks. We can leave this one out. But what this psalm shares is that God knows us intimately and he cares about what we do. So again, there's two sides to that. It ought to terrify us if we only want to do evil. But if we want to pursue him, if we want to relish in that love, it ought to be a great comfort to us. So yes, if today you are living against God and his word, know that he knows it 100%. If you're harboring secret sins, know that God sees it all. But know that if he sees it all, he's also willing to forgive it if you will confess your sins. And he is still willing to have a relationship with you. Nowadays, people talk about toxic people, right? And you need to put them out of your life. If God put away toxic people, you know what would happen? We'd be all wiped off the face of this earth. And he almost did it once when he sent a flood to this earth. All he left were 8 people. And God said, I'll never do it again. And then he sent his son to die for these people. That's who your God is. God knows everything. He knows us intimately and he cares about us. That's what the beginning of this beautiful psalm shows us. Now let's look at verses 7 to 12. And this just emphasizes that God is everywhere. But you can read a dusty theological book and it will say God is omnipresent and it will define omnipresence. Or you can say it in this way that David said. This is why I like the Psalms. They're poetic. They give you the truths about who God is, but in a beautiful way. Verse 7, where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines in the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. What this is showing us is that God is everywhere, right? I can't go here, there, high, low, far, near, but God is there. It shows us that God knows everything about us because he's everywhere. This is because of his omnipresence. So the first part of this psalm that says God knows us in and out, his ability to do that is because he's everywhere, all at once. The book of Ezekiel portrays it this way, that the presence of God is a wheel within a wheel, and on that wheel are eyeballs all over it. And this wheel within a wheel, kind of like this gyro thing that just goes everywhere, every way, and it sees everything because there's eyeballs all over it. If you ever read that in Ezekiel and thought, what in the world does that mean? It means the same thing as these verses. It means that God sees everything and he can go anywhere. Okay? Now there's some descriptions in here you might think, wow, I never thought about that. But like verse 8 when it says, if I ascend to heaven, you're there. Of course we know that. But then it says, if I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. That word hell would be better translated Sheol. That's the Hebrew word that means often just grave. It's the abode of the dead. It's not necessarily just hell where you go to be judged. And in fact, the word hell is it's an English word that comes from a German word, from a German concept of the underworld. Usually we use it to translate Greek and Hebrew terms. In the New Testament, you have this place called Hades, which is what we translate as hell. It's the abode of the dead where they are judged for what they do incorrectly. But in the Old Testament, you have Sheol, and that's the grave, and it doesn't make a designation between where the good or the evil go. Sheol is the idea of this body gets put into the ground, and then my consciousness, my soul, whatever you want to call it, departs from me, from this body, and then resides somewhere that none of the rest of us who are alive can go to. Now, the Old Testament doesn't really make a differentiation whether you suffer if you were good or you live well if you were, the other way. You suffer if you're evil, and if you live in paradise if you're good. It doesn't really explain that till you get to the New Testament. But whatever the case, Sheol is the idea of you're not there in the presence of God. You're not there with anyone. You're separated from God. You're dead. And David says in other Psalms that in Sheol, in this place, nobody praises you there. So it's when you see that word hell there, don't think, oh, this is necessarily that God is going to be in hell. What it's saying is that God is everywhere all at once. And this isn't giving you a doctrine that God lives in hell with people. That's not how it works. It's giving you a doctrine of even if you're in the grave, God is actually there with you. Nothing can hide you from him. What I also love is it talks about if I try to say darkness will hide me from God, it's not going to work. And that's just a wonderful truth. Understand, darkness can never overcome the light. Darkness always flees at light. It has no power over it. Darkness exists when the light isn't on it, but when the light is shown in darkness, what happens? Does darkness consume the light? No. Light always dissipates the darkness, and that's what God does. God's light can always brighten the darkness. So God is everywhere. That's what verses 7 to 12 tell us. Well, now verses 13 to 16, here's the part that kind of coincides with what we're thinking about this Sunday. God knows babies as a work of art that he creates. And here's where the poetry really piles on here, okay? And we'll talk about that. David says this, "For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written. The days fashioned for me when as yet there were none of them." I want us to just notice the beauty of this text as the psalmist describes how God makes a baby. And if this passage doesn't move you to care about the unborn, I don't know what will. Verse 13 says, You formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. So this is saying that God was active in the forming inside the womb of a baby. That God was forming the baby in the mother's womb. God was actively part of that. That God values that life, that he knew it, that he planned it. It says, as my days hadn't even happened yet in their book they were written down. God, when he made you, he made it with a purpose. He didn't just come up with this on the fly and he thought about it. This is why he searches you and knows you, because he made you in the first place. But I want to talk about some of the words that are used in this text here when it says, you formed my inward parts. You know what that word is in the Hebrew? That's the word kidneys. Okay? You formed my inward parts, meaning you formed my kidneys. The kidneys in the Old Testament, in the Bible, and in the whole ancient Near Eastern world were thought of as the seat of the emotions. Okay? Where do we find the emotions often? When we're talking about where you feel emotions, what body part do we use? The heart, right? Yeah, we talk about, I feel it in my heart. But sometimes we say the same thing, this concept that they thought about in the ancient Near Eastern world. Sometimes, do you get a feeling in your gut, right? Sometimes you'll say, yeah, I went with my gut. My gut told me this. Sometimes also, where do you get butterflies when you see someone that you're in love with, when you're Twitter-pated? Or if you're nervous, you get butterflies where? This is just how our language talks. It's not scientific, right? I get butterflies in my stomach. Okay? So sometimes we feel emotions. We talk about them more lower than the heart. Yes, sometimes your heart flutters when you're in love with someone, but sometimes your stomach gets going too. Right? This is the Hebrew ancient Near Eastern concept. So when it says you formed my inward parts, on the one hand it's saying you formed that part of me that feels things, but it's also just literally saying you formed my kidneys, Lord. You made my internal organs. That's how intimately involved with the creation of a baby God is. That's why we stand for human life, because God forms those kidneys that develop. God forms those kidneys. And he has had this world be cursed because of sin, and sometimes these things don't form well. Sometimes there's a hitch in that because sin is in this world. But God is intimately involved with the forming of life. So he forms kidneys. It says, you formed my inward parts. Then it says, you covered me in my mother's womb. Now that word covered, our translators struggle with that. And probably what it means, better than covered me, is that you wove me. And here's why, again, I think it just is why wove would be a better translation. For one, that could be the translation in Hebrew. For two, it keeps the artistry of the text involved. Because what was the first thing it said? You formed my inward parts. That's a work of artistry. So then it would make sense that parallel to that would be, you wove me in my mother's womb. That, again, we're this work of art. We're like a tapestry, and God is weaving us as we are growing in our mother's womb. Okay? Now, that also shows we're a work in progress. Yes, when a baby is formed in the womb, there are certain parts of that baby that aren't developed yet, right? You know this when you have children and you have multiple children and you hold the little baby and your young son or daughter comes up and you let them hold it. What is one of the first things you learn about a baby? And a thing that always fascinated me when I was young. Well, first you talk about support the neck, right? That's because their neck muscles aren't fully developed yet. But then what's going on with a baby's head when they're first born? They have that little soft spot, right? And that's one of the first things you have to tell kids. Like, don't push on the soft spot. Now, they might not have known about the soft spot if you had told them about it, but you're always kind of like, please don't push on the soft spot, right? The baby isn't fully developed even out of the womb yet. There are parts of the baby, and you and I aren't fully developed. And then we get fully developed, and then we undevelop, right, as we get older, and things go away. We build muscle, and then we watch that muscle leave. But the whole process is it's a work in progress, and God recognizes that work in progress as a human within the process. It's not just the finished product. The thing is a human. It's a work of art that God is working on, and even without it being finished doesn't mean it's not a human. Okay? So you see what I'm saying when it comes to our ideas of life and in the womb and what's going on and how we value human life and even life outside the womb. Even if there are things that are not fully developed, that does not mean that there is not full humanity in that person, and that God isn't intimately involved and doesn't care about that person. Okay? Sanctity of human life means not only do we care about the unborn, but we care about those after who've been born, and even if for instance, they have cognitive disabilities, it doesn't mean they're not fully human. If they have physical handicaps, it doesn't mean they're not fully human. If they are aging, if they are old, and if they, the Eskimos would put you out on an iceberg, if they're at that point in life, it doesn't mean they're not fully human. Okay? This is showing us that in the process of developing, God still values humans. So in the process of developing and undeveloping and our aging, and as our bodies, get destroyed because of death in this world, and they just start to age and decay, you are still fully human. That's why Christians should always stand for life at every stage, folks. We should not be for things like euthanasia. We should not be for things like, weeding out the mentally disabled from the population, right? Because humans are God's piece of artwork. You wove me in my mother's womb. Then it says in verse 14, I'll praise you for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful is a word that we find used in the Bible. And whenever you see the word wonderful in English translation, I want you to think of this word, miraculous. That's what wonderful means. It doesn't mean like the way my dad used it when I was growing up. Oh, wonderful. We use it kind of sarcastically. But wonderful means to evoke wonder in someone. It's not like Lawrence Welk who would say, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. No, it just invokes in us the sense of awe. And we say, wow. That's what wonderfully made means. It's miraculous. Life is miraculous. So that's what it's saying there when it's saying I'm wonderfully made. I'm miraculously made. and that my soul knows full well. Verse 15 says this, my frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret. Do you know what that word frame is throughout the rest of the Old Testament? We translate it this way often. It's the word bones. Frame could be translated as bones. Again, see, this is a baby developing in the womb, and it's got a framework to it. God is saying, I put your bones together. You know, the knee bone connected to the whichever bone. I don't know that song. You know. So God is putting together our frame, and frame means bones. And then I think this is my favorite in studying this passage and reading in Hebrew this week. Here's what excited me the most. When I looked up this phrase, when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth, that phrase, skillfully wrought, it takes two words to come up with something so wonderful. You could translate it this way. Colorfully embroidered. That's how you find this used throughout the rest of the ancient Near Eastern world. This is a phrase used of colorful embroidery. Do you know someone good at embroidering? You know, not just embroidering, but colorfully doing it, right? Embroidery, some of the most tedious work when you're working on things. I don't like doing any work like this. You know, I took this 3D art class in high school, and it just involved your hands working on tedious stuff. We did origami, we did these wire sculptures. The only thing I liked was clay. I like sculpting with clay, but anything else, sewing, I can't stand sewing at all. And now the older I get, I hadn't threaded a needle in probably 15 years, and then I tried to do that the other day. I'm like, oh wow, I have not tried to do this since my eyes got 15 years older. And I'm just like, woof, I needed a needle thread about a hole that big, and then I would have been able to do it. And this is saying God skillfully embroiders us, colorfully, makes this beautiful tapestry, this beautiful thing to display to the world. That's what a baby in the womb is. That's just so wonderful. And you see all these ideas of God doing this in the womb because it uses words like womb. It says, what are the other words we see in this passage? In the secret place, in the lower parts. This is all just emphasizing down here in the mother's belly, God is doing a work of art. And that is why we value the unborn, and that's why we fight for them. Now, all of a sudden, this psalm is going to take this giant shift. And often I wouldn't read this when I'd read this psalm because it was just so unlike the rest of the psalm. So if I were reading this on a Sanctity of Life Sunday, I would often leave this out because it just doesn't sound as nice as the rest of the psalm. Verse 19, I'm sorry, did we read 17 and 18? How precious are your thoughts to me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more in number than the sand. When I am awake, I am still with you. Again, God loves us. He's there with us. Verse 19, oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, bloodthirsty men. Whew, that's quite a turn, isn't it? For they speak against you wickedly. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate them, O Lord, who hate you? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with a perfect hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, know my heart. Try me, know my anxieties, and see if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So all of a sudden, this psalm takes a sharp turn, and you might think, what is going on here? And you say, what does God know? Oh, so, sorry, I'll give you the last few points. God knows people because he artistically fashioned them. I always do this to myself. I get going and then have to go back on your notes here. All right, This is why life matters even in the womb, because God made it. Now, change of pace, right? God knows how to punish the wicked. That's what these verses say. Now, here's what I struggled with as I'm reading this. It just doesn't fit the beauty of the rest of the psalm. So how can I include this? But then, you know what? I have to submit to Scripture. Because no, I'm not the one that wrote Scripture. God is the one who wrote this through the pen of David. And here's what God wants us to know. In view of such beauty and how much he loves people and cares about them, we ought to feel passionate about who people are and about the fact that God loves them, values them, artistically made them. And if anyone would seek to destroy that, to destroy people, we ought to hate that. That's what this is saying. This is saying that our reaction to those that hate life ought to be strong. Our reaction ought to be, God, do your work. Now, this isn't saying rise up and let me kill them. This isn't saying let me bomb an abortion clinic. This is saying let me rise up and cry out to God, declare those who are doing evil that they're evil, and declare that God cares about life, and ask God to defend life. That's what this is doing. So this part of the psalm is not out of character. It's the natural response that God wants us to have in view of such beautiful life that he has created. So I know we're not used to praying such things like this, but that's what the Psalms are about. They're about saying, God, you take vengeance on the wicked. It's not saying I'm going to do it. It's not saying I'm going to take up arms and start slaying everyone that would slay a baby. It's saying, God, you do it, and it's saying, I align with you and your plan, God. And your plan is for life. So any who would take life, their life should be taken. It says it way back in Genesis after the flood, right? If man sheds blood, by man shall his blood be shed. That it is absolutely necessary. So we are asking for God to be righteous and just with the wicked. And that's what this section is about. It's not out of place in this psalm. So this shows us our response to the evil of destroying humans that God has created. Our response should be to pray that God would justly destroy these wicked ones. Now, here's how he could destroy them. He could destroy them by saving them. And we should rejoice in that, okay? We shouldn't just wish that God would, kill all of them and think, okay, use me, Lord, and I'll go blow up Planned Parenthood. That's not what this is saying to do. It's saying, though, to destroy them in their wickedness and be glad when that happens. You know, I'm thankful God destroyed wickedness in my life by saving me from it. Okay? So that is what could happen. You could be praying and see the salvation of these folks. Or in the end, yes, if they will not depart from this wickedness, you are praying that God will destroy that, will not allow that to continue. And you can be confident that in praying that is God's will. This is something I will say that might sound controversial. It is okay to hate what God hates. Right? Sometimes we try to be more Christian than God. Well, I'm going to just love everybody, Lord. Well, what does that mean? I will just love everybody. God wants wickedness destroyed, and he will destroy it. And we want to put ourselves on the side with God doing that. It's okay to hate what God hates. Well, let's get that one up yet. Okay? But if you're going to pray a prayer so strong that you say, God, slay the wicked. Slay those who would destroy your beautiful works of art. Slay them. Here's what else you need to pray. Notice, how does the psalm finish? Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties. See if there is any wicked way in me. So we've got to examine our own hearts. And that's what I find. Every time that I'm tempted to just pray these, the fancy term is imprecatory prayers of the Psalms. These prayers of, Lord, judge that person. Then I start to think, Lord, do I need to be judged? And Lord, it kind of tempers my prayer. Lord, sure, judge them, but also please offer them the salvation that you've given to me, because I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be slayed for my own wickedness. You know, the only way that comes is through Jesus Christ forgiving us. That we confess our sins. Jesus is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse all of us from that unrighteousness. If we would trust that, the wickedness can be taken off of us. So, when we are praying these kind of harsh prayers, we need to have our motives examined. Right? Lord, search me, know me. See if there's any wicked way in me. Okay. So I don't want to end this sermon with a call to you getting angry about all the wicked who are killing and just being angry. And thinking, what can I do to stop this? I want you to end this sermon with the idea of, Lord, search me and root out wickedness from my own heart. It says this in God's word. I think I even mentioned this last week, that yes, judgment is coming into this world, but it starts with the house of God. And if we as a church are doing what's right, and if we are helping humanity to thrive, we will see the world have less opportunity for wickedness. So let's rise up, let's examine our own hearts, but at the same time, it is okay to hate the wickedness of the world. Okay? It is okay to be completely against the idea that you would kill children in the womb. That is not something that we have to participate in any sense. So I encourage you, hate what God hates, but pray that God examines your own heart. And that's how we can see life thrive in this world. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, I just thank you for your word and how it examines our hearts. Lord, as we respond to this passage, we just say, wow, Lord, it's so awesome that you desire to know us. I thank you for that. And I pray that you will make us people that desire to know others, that get to know them, that build relationships with unlovely people who need the love of Jesus, who need the love of their Creator, who need to be restored. And Lord, I pray we be the people sharing that love. I pray that you would examine our hearts. And Lord, I pray that you would end the evil of the wicked. I pray that you would slay those who slay your people who you have created in the womb. In Jesus' name I pray.